welcome and bienvenue and welcome back to Opus Magnum with Lyte. And today we're going to be looking at the Mist of Incapacitation. But first, I'd like to thank everybody who's interacting down in the comments and over on the Discord, because this game is a whole lot more fun when people are a community about it, looking at things and be like, oh, I can totally do that better. Ooh, have you thought of this? Ooh, have you thought of that? And it's really, really quite fun. And we've got ourselves some global records. I did finish off stream, albeit, the story mode. And so we now have access to the global records. And there has been an update that had us go through and re-verify our various solutions. So these should be relatively well up to date. They're not guaranteed optimal, but most of them are there, or at least close. So you can know going in whether or not you need to work really hard to get something better, or save it for when you're feeling, you know, feisty. So here, with the Mist of Incapacitation, the minimal cycle solution was surprisingly easy to come across. After the various things that I had learned up to this point, it wasn't that bad coming up with a solution that just gets the job done. And so we grab and we drop, we grab and we pull, and both of these are now ready to be dragged in. They're already grabbed and ready to go, so we pull it quickly and drop it. I mean, that's all there is to this one. So the bottlenecks are comparable all the way around, that you need 2 airs and you need 2 quicksilvers. So lead is nice and slow. You only need the 1 arm to get the lead done. You need the 2 for the quicksilver, but it's not a big deal. And then we've got 2 for the air. Since we want to drag by the air, we're going to use the track over here. Since we drag by the air here, we move this air first, such that we have a handle on it before the tin gets there. And so both of them are dragged by the air, because the quicksilver is also mildly annoying to get everywhere it needs to go. And so it's fairly quick and easy that it just gets the job done. So you check which things you're pulling out last and how far they have to go. So your second air moves 1, 2, and is dropped. The first air you don't really need to worry about so long as you're pulling them at full speed. So we've got a step of 1, 2 from that air that is being pulled out at its fastest rate. Same goes for the quicksilver. 1, 2, and then everything else, it all takes pretty much the same length of path from being generated to being finished. So even without the global records, I was very confident on this one. I knew that this one was going to be really good. It is entirely possible to make this cheaper, because like people have said, well, I think one person in particular said, you can quickly and easily make something like this cheaper by turning anything that's a piston into a static arm on a track. So since everything else on this is pretty straightforward, let's do that real quick. So we have down and up copy, we open it up, and we take each of these pistons and we replace it with an arm on a track. So we're going to start with number 3. So we have, it's going to push it from here. Come on, mouse. From here to there. And so we grab ourselves an arm, put it in place, and then we move 9 up to where 3 is. And we do the same thing, but instead of pushing, we have pluses. And so now we can get rid of number 3, and it works just fine. So now we need to take this lead and push it over. So we grab another track, grab another arm, we move it up to where number 5 is, grab, plus, reset, repeat, and then we get rid of number 5. It's important to make sure it doesn't get in the way of anything, but that one's fine. And now we're grabbing this and pulling it down. So we can just grab ourselves another track, pull it down, arm of length 2, move it up to where number 6 is, grab, plus, reset, repeat, delete number 6. And so that shaves a little bit off of each of those 3, making it an equal speed solution for slightly less money. So, still 26, but now, instead of costing $290, it only costs $260. And we'll rename it Cutting Corners. And it's just that easy to shave a little bit of cost off of it. Normally, we do this sort of thing in the cost optimizations, but you can still do it in your speedy type solutions. Such that you can be like, did I really need to use a piston there, or could I get away with a track? But every time you add the track, you add area. So we cut the cost by 30 Gs, but we increase the area by 3. So it's just a question of, do you want to decrease the cost at the expense of increasing the area? So the other solutions that we've got here, we've got one that's almost small. This one was just me trying to make something pretty small, just to get it done. And you can see we've got a couple of hexes that end up getting into our solution that really don't belong. And this button right here, you can see the area that you've used, so you know exactly which things you've used and which things you haven't. And so you can see clearly those 2 hexes, you don't need to use those 2 hexes. So we can exit out of this one and be like, okay, we can get that down to 12. And so we just take the 2 that we're pointing out, move them up here, and that's such that all of those wobbles that we were doing, we can do over the exit. Because whenever you can do things over the exit, it saves you on space. It's not quick, that's for certain. But there are no unused hexes, there's no extra widgets or thingamajigs that we need. But the fact that we use a piston likely means that it's not as cheap as we can get. Because yes, one piston is cheap, but a static arm on a track is cheaper, as we demonstrated in the fast solution. Now we don't have to watch this entire thing. And so we can move on to parallel, which costs 60 Gs, so 10 Gs less. It's faster than the other 2, but uses significantly more area. Now this one is a little bit weird in the way I constructed it, but I like it. I like the way it moves. I like that it pulls the Quicksilver out and around. It's not necessary. By no means does it need to do that, but I like it. I like that big old swing that it takes around the outside. And so by using this track, we can have several inputs that would normally block a purely static arm, but being able to shift back and forth gives you access to more than you would have otherwise. And oddly enough, it's faster than the other ones. Likely because the reset length isn't quite as far. Because it's still a lot of cycles compared to 26, but it's pretty cheap compared to 332, because it doesn't have any of that wobbling back and forth to stay over our current solution. So we've seen a couple of secrets in cutting cost, using up less space. Sometime in the near future, we're likely to run into situations where we need to not only take advantage of the exit, but also the entrance. But now that we have the global records, we can go back to some of our earlier problems and see whether or not they do, in fact, have the optimal solution. So, for example, our good friend... Oh, airship fuel did not get rerun properly. I don't know why some of these didn't get rerun. So, for example, it thinks I've got 20, when in fact I have 19. So if you did rerun your solutions, via the automatic rerunner thingy, you'll probably want to go back through and make sure they actually... See? 179 is not my record. You'll want to go back through and make sure that the leaderboard has been updated for you properly. It likely reran ones that have new physics or something that they updated, because there's no way my rerunning of it actually rerun everything. Like, see, 33 versus 26, which is, optimal. So if you're experiencing similar sorts of situations, just go back through one by one, see whether or not, like here, it thinks I spent 50, I actually cost 30. Now this will take a while to run, so I'll rerun it later. But if you don't know where to rerun it, you go to the options, re-verify solutions, you click it, and it'll run through the various solutions that you've made in a rather quick fashion and update your leaderboard position. But it, at least for me, when I ran it the first time, did not actually update all of them properly, so you might want to go through and do it by hand. That's all for this episode. I will see you in the next episode of Opus Magnum with Lyte.